Hello there, hackers, friends. I've got snowing going here on the canvas or stage. This is the Codesters program. Now, I'm not going to talk about Codesters much. It's just an intro, a segue. I just wanted to welcome middle high school people who maybe are following some of my stories because you want to know more about computers. And this is looks kind of like it's from the kid world, and it kind of is. In my company, we encourage a different environment for like high schoolers, but actually, I don't think there's anything patronizing about having visuals. You're going to learn a lot, no matter how. I think people have this association that pictures are for kids, and then once you take away the pictures and it's all just words, then that's adults. But that's a stereotype you might want to get free from, like the whole idea that graphic novels are just for kids and so on. We used to just call them comic books, but see, right away, it's like the idea is cartoons are for kids is something like Jim Henson tried to get away from. The Muppets are for kids and succeeded over a long period. Brought the puppets back to the adult world. What I really, speaking of puppets, there's my segue. What I really wanted to talk about a little bit more was this history, American history, that we're now going to want to share just so that new kids get up to date, new people to the story. What's going on here? It's kind of confusing. And what's this Russian hacker? So this is a video about how that happened, how that got to be scary. You see this lady here, she's like, aren't you worried about calling on Putin's intelligence service directly in a speech in public? That you hope that Russia, if you're listening, this is Trump, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. So he's saying this directly to the Russians. And what you've discovered in looking at this indictment, perhaps, which we went over a little bit in the last video, I've embedded it in my blog already. It's called Geek Lore, Friday, January 24th. So that's getting into this whole indictment a little bit. But I wanted to do like a part two. So that's really what this is about, not codesters, not falling snowflakes. Now, when I teach this online, these snowflakes look smooth to me, but because of lack of bandwidth, the going over the wire over the internet, the people I'm teaching, they see it very stop and start, kind of jerky looking, not smooth until they get a copy locally. But with Camtasia here, the video software I'm using, it's okay. Now, let's talk about literature, British literature in particular. There's a certain style of novel, um, pioneered by women in many cases, where the author has like omniscient powers. The person writing the story in the third person often has total insight into what each and every character is thinking. And that's kind of a cool sort of playing house way to be a god, really, because you get to move the characters around in your novel and attribute to them thoughts equally. It's not like you're any one of them yourself. You don't need a point of view other than the omniscient point of view. And the indictment, as you've seen, has some of that flavor. You always wonder how these spies managed to know at exactly what time this secret team in Russia hacked into or logged into that secret team's server. Because to know that, you have to have a spy in there, isn't it? Is it a human who, like, hey, this is what happened at 7:53, or more likely, it's one of these keystroke analyzer programs. And to think that there's one actually sitting there in Moscow, that's what makes, CrowdStrike so powerful here, is their connections, their ability to pull the strings, and that must be like the NSA must do that. So they must know that from there. Anyway, they also have this odd fact that right exactly on or about July 27th, we're not exactly sure on what date, but after hours, so they were working sort of at an odd time. These people in Moscow, the team, the conspirators, they like they must have called each other and let's go to work right now, or they stayed late, right? They were already there, but they decided not to go home. And why is that true? Because on that date, July 27, that's when the scary speech happened, where the president, it's not yet the president, but he's acting like he's the president. And he's being, where'd that go? Where's that story go? I'm going to have to go to history here. Remember how to use your browser. It was some kind of NBC thing, I thought. Trump's plea, yeah, right. So is it a plea or is it an order? So the word they chose here was plea. Hey, please, Russians, find those missing emails that Hillary Clinton has hidden or lost or smashed, or, didn't they find a garage full of smashed hard drives at some point? The idea that there's just one server, I don't know what that means, but a lot of these people, they grew up in a time before any of this technology existed, right? The reporters maybe don't understand it very well. So this whole internet stuff is very new and very scary to people. And the idea that, Russians could actually find these emails is pretty scary. In fact, the whole idea is they did find a lot of these emails, right? And then they created the Guccifer cutout to sort of say, hey, false trail, like when you do a hash, from hash house harriers. When you know what hash running, right? It's nothing to do with hashish. It's this sport that the British invented where you run through like a foreign city and there's false trails. The person who lays the trail that you got to follow the next day, I forget what their role is, but they're going to create and mark on chalk and stuff. It's more fun than jogging. It's like team jogging in a labyrinth or maze, more like a maze or labyrinth. And so, hey, this is a false trail, this Guccifer 2, and how exactly that they figured that out, we went through that in the last video, if you saw that, okay? I've also embedded this in my blog, and, I would like to keep you guys entertained. By guys, I don't mean just any particular gender. When I say guys, remember, I just mean other people. But you're interested in this computer stuff, and I'm a guy too, by the way, so all people are guys, you could say, right? So after hours, that's when they started for the first time to spearfish. Now, it would take a while to actually get people to fall for that, right? You know what spearfishing is. So it's like this is where they stayed after hours to send these fake emails first time on the president's request, it really looks like. So this is where the collusion could have been made. There was the public speech and then this sudden need to stay after hours to try to get people to fall for this fake email, the spearfishing attack. It started on the president's cue, according to this, you could say, reading between the lines a little bit. And I'd say you're supposed to. And like a British novel, you have a point of view here that's really powerful, that you can see all this. Now, you can piece that together, actually. If you're doing nonfiction, what you need to do, of course, is interview all the people post facto and try to reconstruct, right? What were they thinking? And then you can tell it in real time, kind of, you can put the thoughts, you don't have to, you can cut out all that making the documentary interview part and just go back to doing like a dramatization, is called, where you show what's going on. You even can hear what they're thinking, but it is a reconstruction. Anyway, part of the being a geek is you have to realize how you establish these different facts, right? How do we get to know certain things? Log files, good example. And they said, the GRU tried, they did delete their logs, tried to cover their trails, but CrowdStrike sees through that, right? So the eye in the sky, remember that. That's the trope. So anyway, very interesting specimens of professional, it's part of American history now, right? All this stuff. So if you're eager to learn about computers and you're bored with like snowy day stuff and you want to go up to like what do adults do after they've learned how to program, well, some of them get into cybersecurity and stuff like this and get to, kind of figure out, put together through what's called forensics, a picture of what happened, who did what when, and then tell it as a story, which may be a story of criminal wrongdoing, which is what we have in this indictment. And then if you believe this story, then that's done. You believe it, okay? And that may be the intended effect. If you want to prove the story in court, well, in this case, that seemed probably unlikely from the beginning because all these people are outside the jurisdiction of the U.S., but they've broken U.S. laws. It's not that they're not guilty, right? It's a criminal story, but we never got to establishing how it worked. And by the way, last time I said Agent X, I should have said X agent. And I was a little bit unclear about which units, who belong to what, but you can research that. You can figure out these two units really, 26165 and 74455 were the two units involved. And in my last video, I talked about how people in this unit logged into this unit and used that to do some searches so that they could figure out how to write the Guccifer page that really got everything rolling with the Guccifer page, which is like a CrowdStrike ad, right? It's like, ha ha, you think I'm just one person, but I'm really the Russians, right? That's what he says, but he's not, right? He's team whatever. He's one of those teams. So, and he's being caught. So that's the interesting part of this story. Who's catching who? Got to make sure you understand the plot, is what I'm saying. So I'm trying to. All right, interesting history, right? It's definitely a spy novel. Welcome to spy literature, folks. Lots of fun. Talk to you soon.